You hurt human children, now humanity will make your entire species suffer. HFY, Sci-Fi stories. The galaxy had always believed humanity to be fragile. Their homeworld, Earth, was a pale blue dot in the vastness of the cosmos, surrounded by stars that had burned for millions of years. To the older and more powerful races, humanity seemed like little more than a passing curiosity, small, young, and easily ignored. But the universe, it seemed, had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity's resilience. The Kthar, a towering, insectoid species known for their cunning and ruthlessness, had come to Earth as invaders. They came in force, their warships blotting out the sky and their foot soldiers descending with a hunger for conquest. The human governments tried to resist, but they were outmatched. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, and their military tactics, although full of grit and determination, could not hold up against the might of the Kthar war machine. But then, the Kthar made a fatal mistake. They did not just invade. No, they went further. They targeted the children. The Kthar, in their arrogance, thought they could crush humanity's spirit by attacking the most vulnerable. They raided schools, orphanages, playgrounds, places where children played and learned, unaware of the horrors happening around them. The Kthar captured hundreds, maybe thousands, of human children, taking them as prisoners, subjects of experimentation. And worse, they thought it would break humanity. They thought that by hurting the innocent, they would force the human race to kneel in terror. But they had no idea what they had just ignited. Humanity did not fall apart in despair. No, it united. It fought back with a ferocity and determination that the Kthar had not seen in any other species. The media, the internet, the voices of the common people, they all roared for justice. Parents, children's rights activists, soldiers, and scientists alike rallied to a cause greater than themselves, to reclaim the stolen children. And they did. The Kthar had made the mistake of underestimating the power of human emotion, of the sheer force that comes when humanity fights not just for survival, but for something greater, something sacred. The children were freed, but the message had been sent. Humanity would never forgive this. Now, it was time for the Kthar to suffer. Humanity unleashed its wrath in ways the galaxy had never anticipated. They adapted quickly, out of necessity. Human engineers, once working in the shadows, developed technologies that far surpassed their previous limitations. Using the knowledge gained from the recovered children, many of whom had been subjected to Kthar-esque experiments, humanity reverse-engineered their captors' technology, learning and innovating faster than any species had before. Human fighters were everywhere now, hacking into Kthar systems, sabotaging their ships, turning their weapons against them. It was not just the humans who fought. The Kthar had made the mistake of kidnapping children from all across the galaxy. Not just Earth, the survivors, and their families, joined the human cause, forming an unstoppable coalition. Other species had witnessed the brutality, and they had seen what humanity was capable of when it was pushed to the edge. The human counterattack was swift, precise, and merciless. The Kthar war machine, once the pinnacle of interstellar conquest, began to crumble under the relentless pressure of human ingenuity and fury. Entire fleets of Kthar ships were disabled or destroyed, their once invulnerable strongholds turned into rubble. But humanity wasn't satisfied with just vengeance. They wanted something more. They wanted to ensure that no species would ever again dare to harm their children, or any children, ever again. Humanity forced the Kthar to sign a treaty, not just for their surrender, but for their absolute submission. Every last one of the Kthar-esque colonies, their homeworld included, was to be placed under human supervision. The once feared Kthar would become nothing more than a shadow of their former selves, their species reduced to a pariah, isolated from the galactic community, unable to harm others. The Kthar would now know what it felt like to be the victim, to be the one watched over, as they had once done to the children of Earth. No longer would they be allowed to run rampant across the stars. No longer would they have the luxury of conquest. The human message was clear. You hurt human children, now humanity will make your entire species suffer. The galaxy, once filled with whispers of the human race's fragility, now understood something new. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not naive. Humanity, when it came to its children, would burn worlds to protect them. And the Kthar, along with any who dared to follow their path, would learn to fear the relentless drive of a species that had never known defeat when it came to protecting its own. The Kfar would learn, the hard way, that the true power of humanity was not in its weapons, nor in its technology, but in its hearts, and they would never forget what it meant to have awakened the fury of an entire species bound together by love, loyalty, and the unbreakable will to protect those they held dear. The Kfar thought they were unstoppable. Now, they were nothing more than a cautionary tale in the annals of galactic history. As the Kfar's empire crumbled, humanity did not cease its pursuit. With every victory, there was a relentless push forward. Humanity's leaders knew that the war was not merely about defeating an enemy, it was about ensuring that the Kfar's atrocities would never be forgotten, never be allowed to be repeated by any species again. The human effort became a crusade of sorts, but it was not fueled by the need for conquest or glory. It was driven by an unwavering resolve to protect their children, to defend innocence, and to teach the galaxy a simple, but undeniable lesson: touch the innocent, and the full weight of humanity's wrath will follow. The Kfar had learned this lesson in the worst way possible. Their homeworld, once a thriving hub of their species, was now a place of desperation and silence. What had once been a fortress of war was now an isolated, quarantined zone, abandoned by its former allies, surrounded by human-controlled fleets. Kfar leaders, once mighty and untouchable, were brought to trial, tried not only by humanity but by the allied forces of every species that had suffered under Kfar tyranny. In the trials, humanity ensured that the Kfar's atrocities were laid bare for the galaxy to see. The horrors inflicted upon the children were broadcast across all channels, an undeniable testament to the Kfar's cruelty. The recordings, the testimonies, the evidence, it all pointed to one thing: the Kfar were no longer a species to be feared, they were to be pitted and isolated. The punishment was brutal, but fair. Their empire was divided, their fleets shattered, their colonies disbanded, their very identity was torn apart. But this was not a mere matter of revenge, it was a warning. Every other species in the galaxy that had watched from the sidelines now knew humanity was not to be trifled with. Those who had thought Earth to be a backwater, unimportant, and fragile had learned just how wrong they were. The galaxy had underestimated the potential of a species that had only just begun to unlock its true power. Humanity had used the Kfar's cruelty as a catalyst to accelerate their technological and strategic evolution. The fight for their children had forced them to innovate, adapt, and grow at an exponential rate. And humanity wasn't stopping with the Kfar. The message was clear: the protection of the innocent was paramount. No longer would humanity be relegated to the back of the galactic stage. No longer would they be seen as weak or naive. Humanity now stood as a force that would not just defend its own, but would rally others to do the same, ensuring the safety of children across the universe, regardless of race or origin. Soon, the laws of the galaxy began to shift. Alliances were forged, not out of power or wealth, but out of a shared commitment to justice. And humanity, with its newfound strength, played a leading role in these alliances. The Kfar's influence was shattered, but their story lived on, a cautionary tale that served as a reminder to all: humanity, when driven by the protection of its young, was an unstoppable force. The galaxy had thought humanity's greatest strength was its technology or its resolve in battle. They were wrong. Humanity's greatest strength was its heart, a heart that, once ignited, could burn brighter than any star and tear down the strongest empire with nothing but love and vengeance combined. The Kfar had hurt human children. Now, every species in the galaxy would understand: when you threaten humanity's future, you will answer to the collective might of all that humanity can become. And the next time a species considered attacking the innocent, they would remember the Kfar's fall, they would remember humanity's rage, and they would know, without a shadow of a doubt, that there is no power in the universe that can match the fury of a species that fights for its children. Humanity had emerged victorious, and the Kfar, forever branded as a reminder, would never forget why. As the dust settled over the Kfar's ruined empire, humanity began to reshape the galaxy in its image, yet not with the arrogance of conquerors, but with the quiet strength of protectors. The war against the Kfar was over, but humanity's influence stretched far beyond the reach of their victory. The message, however, had already been sent, and it echoed through every corner of the galaxy: Never again will anyone hurt a child, and humanity would ensure it. In the aftermath, Earth became a beacon of hope. What had once been a small, isolated planet now stood as a symbol of unyielding resolve. The human coalition formed new alliances with those who had once been at the fringes of the galactic community, species whose voices had been drowned out by the Kthar's tyranny, species who had been victims in their own right, but had never had the strength to stand up against the Empire. Together, they built a new council, the Galactic Accord. It was not just a political body, it was a pact, a solemn oath that every sentient species, regardless of their size or strength, would protect their children. No species would be allowed to suffer at the hands of others, and those who dared to break this oath would face the collective wrath of every signatory. Humanity took on the role of the protector. It was a mantle they had earned with blood, sweat, and tears. Every human child, now safe from the horrors of the Kthar, was a reminder to the galaxy of why this new order existed. The Kthar had learned the price of harming human children, but humanity had made it clear that the price for hurting any child, human or otherwise, was far greater than anyone could imagine. The lessons were not lost on the galaxy's remaining powers. The great empires that had once looked upon Earth with disdain now sought to align with humanity, not out of fear, but out of respect. Their alliances were built on a shared desire to protect their futures and ensure that no child would ever again become a target. Earth had become a center for diplomatic talks, a neutral ground where species of all kinds could come together to discuss, share, and ensure that no horrors like the ones inflicted upon humanity's children would ever again occur. The human spirit, though shaken by the trauma of war, had emerged stronger than ever. The people of Earth now knew that their power was not just in their technology or their military, but in their unity. Every child they saved was a victory, and with every victory, humanity grew even more connected with the stars. Their resolve was not just a matter of survival anymore, it was a matter of something more profound, the safeguarding of innocence itself. Yet, even as humanity basked in the glow of its victory, there were whispers in the shadows of the galaxy. Some species, those that had long acted with cruelty and disregard for others, still remembered the time before the Kthar's fall. They had seen what humanity had done, and they knew that their moment to act without consequence had passed. Though the galactic landscape had changed, the old power struggles would never truly disappear. There would always be those who would test humanity's resolve. But humanity had learned. The lessons of the Kthar would never fade, and their brutal downfall was an example that would endure across time. Now, it wasn't just the powerful empires or warlords who feared humanity, it was anyone who would harm a child, anyone who would bring pain to the innocent. As new conflicts arose in the galaxy, humanity stood ready. They had not forgotten the price of their victory, nor the reasons they fought. Earth had become not only a home but a sanctuary for those in need. The old battles were over, but the war for peace, for protection, for the defense of every vulnerable being across the stars had just begun. And to those who would dare to harm another child, to those who would once again try to tear apart innocence, humanity would be waiting, not as invaders, but as guardians, and they would show no mercy. The galaxy would remember the Kthar. They would remember their cruelty, their downfall, and the wrath of humanity that had undone them. And they would remember the truth that no one could ever forget. Humanity's love for its children was a force more powerful than any empire. And when that love was threatened, the consequences would be felt across the cosmos. Humanity had been pushed to its breaking point, but now, they had become the galaxy's greatest protectors, resilient, relentless, and uncompromising. No one, ever again, would dare harm another child under the watchful gaze of humanity. And as humanity stood tall in the stars, they whispered one final warning to the galaxy: touch the innocent, and you will learn the true meaning of regret. As the years passed, the legacy of the Kthar's fall became ingrained in the very fabric of galactic politics. The Galactic Accord, once an idealistic dream, was now an unbreakable framework that defined interstellar relations. No longer was power simply a matter of military strength or economic dominance. The true measure of any species' worth was their commitment to protecting the innocent, to ensuring that children, every child, was kept safe from harm. Humanity, now regarded as the keystone species of the Accord, continued to thrive. They were no longer the young race they had once been seen as, but the exemplars of what it meant to fight not just for survival, but for a future. Their technology had advanced by leaps and bounds, driven by their need to protect and innovate in ways no one had thought possible. Weapons, shields, and starships once built for war were now designed for peacekeeping, for rescue operations, and for safeguarding the most vulnerable in the galaxy. But with peace came a new challenge. The absence of war created a void that some would seek to exploit. The remnants of the Kthares allies, those who had once stood with them in their campaign of terror, began to resurface from the shadows. While many had been brought to justice, not all had been completely dismantled. Some, like the Zerka, a ruthless, calculating race of merchant guilds, had slipped away during the final stages of the war, retreating into the far reaches of space. They knew the galaxy had changed, but they also knew that humanity's war for peace had left certain cracks in the accord, cracks that could be exploited. The Zerka were not interested in conquest, they were interested in power through manipulation. They saw the flourishing peace as an opportunity, a moment of weakness. They began quietly working behind the scenes, stirring up discontent, attempting to turn the peaceful alliances of the galaxy against one another. Their primary tactic was to target the one thing that still held the galaxy together, the protection of children. Humanity had proven to be a fierce protector of its own. But how would they react when other species' children were threatened? What if they could provoke the first cracks in the accord, turn allies against one another, and find a way to use the precious children of other worlds as leverage? It began slowly at first. Reports of strange disappearances started trickling in from border worlds, far from the major centers of galactic power. Children, primarily from species that were new to the accord, were taken. Some vanished without a trace, while others were found disoriented, their minds fractured by unknown experiments. The Zerka, using their trade routes and underground networks, were careful to keep their fingerprints hidden. They knew that if they could make it appear as though a new threat to the galaxy's children had emerged, the fragile peace would start to unravel. The Zerka knew that if they were successful, humanity's guardianship of the accord would be tested like never before. Would they focus solely on their own species, or would they live up to the promises made when they had forged the peace? Would they come to the defense of other species' children, knowing that the slightest misstep could lead to a galactic-wide conflict? Humanity was not blind to the signs. As soon as the disappearances started, Earth's leaders, ever vigilant after the Kthares atrocities, were the first to mobilize. They had learned long ago that the protection of children was not just a matter of interspecies diplomacy, but a matter of survival. But even as humanity launched their search, they felt the first tremors of doubt ripple through the accord. How long could they maintain this fragile peace? It was not long before the truth came to light. The Zerka had made their move, but they had underestimated one thing: the deep, unshakable bond humanity had with its allies. The moment they learned of the disappearances, every species that had signed the accord, humanity's allies, rallied to the cause, pledging to join in the search for the children. The Zerka had made a grave miscalculation. They had assumed that their manipulation would divide the galaxy, but they had forgotten that humanity was no longer the isolated, fragmented species they had once been. Humanity had evolved into something greater than just a people. It had become a force that brought together other species, united under the banner of protecting those most vulnerable. The galaxy's search for the missing children became a race against time. What the Zerka had not accounted for was the sheer determination of an entire universe, standing together in the defense of the innocents. The Zerka were exposed for their role in the disappearances, and the full weight of the galactic accord descended upon them. Their mercantile empire, once vast and elusive, was torn apart by interstellar law enforcement, their fleets dismantled, their leaders arrested. But the consequences were not just political. For the first time in galactic history, a species, every species, was held accountable for the sanctity of childhood. The Zerka, their greed exposed, were not allowed to simply fade into the void. They were forced to face the families of the children they had harmed, a trial not only in law but in morality. The galaxy, united, demanded restitution, and the Zerka had no choice but to comply. The protection of children, once the most sacred of ideals, had been tested once again and once again. Humanity had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight for what mattered. The Zerka's failure was not just a reminder of their own hubris, it was a warning to all. Humanity's role as the protector of the innocents had been reaffirmed, but the galaxy had also learned a valuable lesson: peace was never a guarantee. It was a constant battle, a force that had to be maintained, nurtured, and defended. As the search for the missing children came to a close, and the Zerka were held to account, humanity's voice rang out across the stars once more, clear and unwavering. No one, no matter how powerful, will ever threaten the safety of children again. And once again, the galaxy understood the cost of underestimating humanity's will. The protector species was a force that, when pushed, would move the stars themselves to ensure that no child, anywhere, would ever again suffer. The Zerka had learned that lesson. The galaxy had learned that lesson. And in the quiet of space, a new era of peace began, not because the galaxy was free of conflict, but because every species knew that the protection of the innocent was worth any cost. The galaxy had been irrevocably changed. The lesson was clear to all: humanity would not tolerate the suffering of innocent children, regardless of the species. The Zerka's downfall, their manipulation and their attempt to sow discord, had only further united the galaxy under the banner of the Galactic Accord. The once mercantile guilds that had preyed on the vulnerable were now nothing but a cautionary tale, their shadowy operations dismantled and their leaders either exiled or imprisoned. Yet, as peace settled over the galaxy once more, a deeper, more unsettling truth began to emerge. There were whispers, faint but persistent, in the corners of space where power still lay unchecked. The Zerka were not the only species with a dark history, and their fall had set a dangerous precedent, one that would make other factions reconsider their actions. It wasn't just the Zerka who had threatened the children of the galaxy. There were other dark forces out there, old enemies with ancient grudges, species whose cruelty had been buried under the weight of millennia. Even now, far beyond the borders of the Accord, there were whispers of strange, new horrors, ruthless forces operating in the shadows, waiting for the moment to strike. For the first time in centuries, a dark undercurrent of fear began to spread through the stars. It began with the Star, a species known for their cold, calculating nature. The Star had once been a distant neighbor to humanity, maintaining a tense, but mostly peaceful, relationship with the galaxy at large. However, their quiet neutrality had masked an insidious history of their own. Their homeworld, Stara, had long been known for its near-complete lack of empathy, a species whose nature was steeped in efficiency, often at the expense of compassion. And now, from the depths of their hidden colonies, rumors surfaced that the Star were undertaking an operation that mirrored the Kthar's cruelty, a secret program that involved abducting children, human and otherwise, for experimentation in their hidden laboratories. The Star had learned from the Zerka's failure. They understood the stakes. If they were to succeed in their unthinkable plans, they would need to keep their actions hidden, quiet, efficient, unnoticed. But they had miscalculated once again. Humanity, ever watchful, had been monitoring the Star's movements for years. After the Zerka's fall, Earth's deep space surveillance networks had been enhanced, and humanity had developed a reputation for uncovering covert operations, no matter how carefully hidden. The first signs of the Star's operation came from intercepted communications. No longer were they the isolated, distant species they once seemed. Their actions, once confined to their homeworld, were now reaching outward, their ships slipping through the darkness of space like ghosts. The first child taken was a human child, a young girl, no older than 10. Her disappearance was quiet, unnoticed at first, until her parents, desperate for answers, contacted the Galactic Accord. What followed was a galaxy-wide investigation led by Earth's finest, with other species offering their expertise, each of them remembering the scars of the Kthar and the Zerka. Humanity, forever shaped by the horrors of their past, would not allow this to happen again. The search for the missing children intensified, and soon, the evidence was undeniable. The Star were not merely conducting research, they were performing horrific experiments on the innocent. They had crossed the line that no species, no matter how cold-blooded or calculating, should ever cross. But humanity knew what had to be done. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Every species that had signed the Galactic Accord, knowing full well what the consequences would be if they allowed such actions to continue, once again came together. The Star, in their hubris, believed their operations to be too secret, their reach too vast. They underestimated the unyielding force of a unified galaxy, especially one that had seen the price of inaction. A coalition of human diplomats, Soldiers, scientists, and trackers spearheaded the operation. But it wasn't just the military might of humanity that would strike this time. It was something deeper. It was the collective will of a galaxy that would no longer tolerate the suffering of any innocent, any child. Every species that had once watched from the sidelines now stood beside humanity. The Star were not just humanity's problem anymore. They were everyone's. The hunt for the Star's hidden bases began with surgical precision. Human and alien warships, once confined to the defense of their territories, now coordinated across systems. Intelligence operatives, aided by the survivors of the Zerka and others who had learned from their past mistakes, infiltrated Star command centers. The children were found alive, but broken. The horror that the Star had wrought was greater than anyone had imagined. Yet, it was not too late. When the Star attempted to retreat to their deepest, most isolated stronghold, they discovered that the galaxy had already arrived. The warships of the Galactic Accord blockaded their last remaining route, and the galaxy's most powerful fleets surrounded them in a vast net. Humanity, standing once more as the vanguard of justice, launched the final assault. The Star had learned their lesson too late. No species could hide behind their walls of secrecy when the eyes of the galaxy were wide open. The Galactic Accord's forces surged through the Star's defenses, dismantling their operations one by one. No longer would their experiments continue. No longer would they exploit the innocence of children. As the last Star stronghold fell, the leaders of their species were brought to trial, not just by the Accord, but by the parents of the children they had taken, by those whose trust had been violated in ways that could never be undone. The Star were condemned not just for their crimes, but for their failure to recognize the strength of a united galaxy. Once again, the message was clear. You hurt children, and the galaxy will make your entire species pay. Humanity had stood at the forefront of these battles before, and they would stand again. But now, they were not alone. The galaxy had learned from their example. The protection of children had become the new law of the cosmos, and the galaxy would no longer tolerate cruelty. No longer would anyone believe they could act in darkness, unnoticed. And as the stars gleamed overhead, the galaxies grew quieter. Peace had come, not because it had been easily won, but because the unity that humanity had inspired was unbreakable. The galaxy would always remember that the greatest strength of any species lay in their willingness to protect the innocent, and to show no mercy to those who dared to harm them. The Star had learned the hard way, just as the Kfar and the Zerka had, and humanity, the guardians of the innocent, had become the true protectors of the stars. The galaxy, now settled into a fragile peace, was wary of the darkness that had once threatened it. The Star's defeat had sent a message across the stars: no species, no matter how hidden or powerful, could escape the wrath of the United Accord if they harmed the innocent. But peace, like any great force, was fragile. Beneath the surface, the tension that had defined the galaxy's past still lingered. The members of the Galactic Accord had learned well from the previous conflicts. They had learned to never again underestimate the potential for cruelty, no matter how well hidden. The laws that governed the Accord were now stricter than ever, and every species had become wary of one another. Though the Star had been crushed, other factions still watched from the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. Humanity, however, remained vigilant. Earth, now a center of galactic diplomacy and cooperation, had assumed the mantle of leadership in the new peace, but it was not without its own struggles. The immense weight of protecting the entire galaxy's children had left its mark on humanity. They had seen what the universe was capable of when left unchecked, seen the darkness that could rise from the smallest, most hidden corners of space. Yet, humanity's resolve remained unshaken. Earth's leaders, diplomats, and scientists worked tirelessly, ensuring that no species could ever again exploit the innocent. They began to develop not just weapons, but defensive technologies, designed to protect entire systems from the threats that might arise in the future. Humanity's defense capabilities had been forged in the fires of war, but now they were used to prevent future suffering, rather than simply reacting to it. New initiatives were launched across the galaxy, ones that would promote the welfare of children in every corner of space. The Accord set up a network of orphanages, shelters, and safe havens where children from any species could find refuge. Humanity's influence was felt in every corner of the galaxy as they pushed for universal education, healthcare, and protections that would ensure the safety and growth of every child, regardless of their origins. But the shadow of what had been done to the children, the trauma that lingered in the collective memory of the galaxy, was never far from their minds. It became clear that the fight for the innocent was not just about preventing physical harm, but about healing the wounds that had been inflicted over generations of suffering. The efforts to protect children were tied to a broader movement, one that aimed to heal the scars of war, rebuild trust, and lay the foundations of a truly unified galaxy. In the years that followed, humanity's role as the protector of the innocent was cemented. The once fractured species that had once looked upon Earth as a distant and insignificant world now came to respect its strength and compassion. They looked to humanity as the beacon of hope, the one species that had not only risen from the ashes of its own history but had ensured that the universe would never again forget the importance of protecting its most vulnerable. But, as with any peace built on the ashes of war, the possibility of its destruction never fully disappeared. The galaxy had learned hard lessons, but it was an unpredictable place, full of factions that would always seek power, and individuals who would never stop trying to exploit the weak. One such faction, though small and hidden, had learned to adapt to the new order. The remnants of the Kfar, scattered across the galaxy after their fall, had not disappeared entirely. Their leaders, though broken, had found new ways to operate in the shadows. They had kept their hatred for humanity alive, nurturing it in secret. They had learned from their mistakes, and now, they had evolved into something more insidious, a network of agents, sleeper cells that infiltrated the deep reaches of the Accord's territories. They were no longer the empire they had once been. Instead, they were a quiet, deadly force, working under the radar, waiting for the right moment to strike. They had learned that brute force would not work against humanity's united front. Instead, they focused on manipulation, exploiting the weaknesses of individuals rather than entire species. Their goal was simple: to fracture the unity humanity had created and return the galaxy to a state of chaos where their influence could once again thrive. They believed that if they could provoke a conflict, cause the species of the Accord to distrust one another, they could undo all that had been achieved. They planned to slowly sow discord, starting with the smallest spark, an act of violence, a missing child, an unknown assailant, and wait for the galaxy to implode from within. And this time, they were not alone. The Kfar remnants had sought out other disillusioned factions, other species that still believed in domination through fear. They began to recruit the disenchanted, the lost, the power-hungry who had been left behind in the wake of the Accord's rise. The very systems that humanity had worked so hard to build to protect the innocent were now being infiltrated from within. A new storm was brewing, one that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of the peace humanity had so carefully cultivated. It started subtly, with the first sign of sabotage in one of the new orphanages. A child was taken, this time, not in secret, but with violence, leaving behind nothing but a trail of destruction. The message was clear. It was not just the threat of kidnapping that haunted the galaxy, but the manipulation of minds, the twisting of alliances, the reigniting of ancient hatreds. But humanity had learned. They knew better than anyone the true cost of underestimating an enemy. This time, the galaxy's resolve would not be so easily tested. Earth's leaders, aided by the allies that had been forged in the fires of the previous wars, quickly mobilized. The new conflict, this time, would not be fought in the shadows. Humanity, along with the other species of the Accord, would not allow the darkness to return. They would root it out, expose it for what it was, and extinguish it before it could grow. The battle for the future of the galaxy was far from over, but the message had been sent, and it echoed throughout the stars. You hurt the children of the galaxy, any children, and you will answer to humanity's wrath. The price of your cruelty will be greater than anything you could ever imagine. Humanity would not stop. Not now. Not ever. They had already proven what they could do when pushed to the brink. And now, they would show the galaxy the full extent of their strength. If you threaten the innocent again, we will stand together, and the stars themselves will tremble.